morning, everybody, and welcome to CEO Chat here on RVN TV. My name, as always, is
Al Cini.
And you are Joe Esserman.
Yes, I am.
And we have, as always, a terrific, engaging, very helpful guest today. His name is Geoff Passehl. He's the founder and owner of Passehl Financial. And we're talking about a very important event in the life of a business owner, which is the point at which they make that transaction that, well, it's not a transaction, there's more to it than that. Your point before the program was, sooner or later, you're going to leave your business. Question is,
I would gather,
is that going to be on your terms or not? Why don't you talk about how you help companies with that?
Yeah, I think the general theme is most business owners have grown their business from startup to sustainable to providing a certain lifestyle, a certain presence in the community. And that journey is not an easy one, and it's one that entrepreneurs can share among one another. And they don't spend a whole heck of a lot of time thinking about what life is like when that isn't the case, when they no longer are the owner of said business.
Right.
And so it's the age-old challenge of getting a business owner or owners to step outside the business from time to time and get a chance to work on the business and not just work in the business.
In the business, that's it. And that's what you do. So in a way, it's an advisory service that you offer.
Sure.
And so the people out there who are watching our program could be owners or founders of businesses. They may be happily or unhappily working in those businesses 16 hours a day as we speak. Sooner or later, they're going to come to the end of the runway, and your job is to make sure they have enough altitude to take off.
I never used aviation terms, but yeah, that's probably about right. I tend to use sports analogies, but sure.
A lot of companies just don't pay, a lot of owners of businesses don't pay any attention to that until the last minute. And the last minute is often past the point of no return. Yeah,
I mean, I've often said, at the risk of offending folks, but certainly that's not my intention. In many, many instances, if you plan to do the right, if you fail to do the right planning, you're probably planning to fail.
Sure.
That's a good point.
You're not going to get the outcome that deep down inside you desire, because the confluence of issues and are just complex, right? I mean, we've got tax issues, and you've got legal issues, and you've got financial issues, and investments, and insurance, and so on and so forth. And then you add the layer of all the mental issues that come along with the exercises to go down these pathways. It's not just going to happen like that one day.
It's not a transaction. It's not an event. It's something you need to plan for. You know, obviously, because you're in the wealth management business, there are tax consequences to decisions like that, cash flow consequences. You know, I mean, a lot of it is about money in the bank and how much money you may not realize you owe to the government when you make an exit from a company. That's part of it.
Come on, Al. You think the government's involved in a transaction? Stop it.
I understand. They're always waiting in the wings, and when they make themselves known, it's often not a pleasant experience. So knowing that that's going to happen and planning for that is a big part of what you do. But if it's a family-owned business, you've got like relatives that need to be taken into consideration too. Talk about how you deal with that.
Yeah, so that largely is the mental side of the equation, right? So I would say with any business owners, whether there's a family member involved or not, it's got to start with a conversation where you simply focus on discovering all the key elements of their goals and the values they possess and what's the future look like for them, and try to get them to paint as much of that picture as possible. So the analogy I like to use is it's kind of like going to the toy store and buying a puzzle, right? So what's on the front of the cover of the box? Right? It's the end result, right? So that's the goal.
That's the goal.
But when we open the box and dump all the pieces on the table, we don't find.
It's not going to look like that.
Doesn't look anything like it.
Right.
The pieces are there, hopefully.
Sure.
As long as we haven't bought a defective toy, but the pieces are there. We just need somebody to help assemble.
How long in advance should somebody think about an exit strategy?
Earlier than they probably think.
Okay.
Right? So the more time they can prepare, likely the better the outcome. And let's not be surprised if, when facts and circumstances change, the ultimate exit strategy might change, right? So today I might be thinking, if I were a prospective entrepreneurial client that I want to sell this business in 10 years.
Right.
That's when I want to get out, and I want to go improve my golf handicap and sit on some charitable boards. And 7 years from now, with 7 years worth of facts and circumstances having changed in the interim, that goal might no longer be.
Might not be the goal.
Right.
The goal may move.
Right. It should move.
And it should move, in
Right.
fact, because the more I know, the more intelligently I can decide what I want to do next, which is also another part of the conversation you like to have with people who are planning for leaving their businesses.
Sure.
What's your next chapter going to look like? What is it you're going to do when this is all over? And how much money do you need to have in order to support you in that?
Right. So if you look at me, sort of my career path as a from a general perspective, or as the public might look at my career path, they see wealth management advisor and they think, okay, that guy and his team, they want to be there to catch the pile of money once Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur sells their business. And while that is true of most folks in our industry, I'd rather meet that business owner well in advance of that and help them with all the critical planning that leads up to that point. And then certainly we would be happy to be in that position to help them with those decisions at that point. But the way I would best describe it is, once you identify goals and objectives that are critically important to this client's future, then we can take them through some assessments to figure out how financially ready are you under whatever set of exits seem to best align with your goals and objectives.
Right.
And then perhaps more importantly, how mentally ready are you?
Are you for this?
Right. I mean, because a lot of us, I have 3 children.
Yeah.
My 4th child is the business that I started 20 years ago when I was a young college grad who thought he could start something in the financial services business. And as crazy as that sounds, I'm still fooling myself, and I'm a lot older than 23.
Right, okay.
You're coming at this from an interesting perspective, because you mentioned before the program, you started your business when you were 24.
Well, actually 22.
22
years old.
Right off the campus.
Yeah. So you've been in this for quite a while now.
One would argue, Al, I don't know very much else.
That's okay. You've had plenty of experience with this, and that by any definition is knowing enough, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take it.
So if somebody's watching this program who might be related to somebody who is in a position where you might be able to help them, it could be that it might be my mother or my father, and I'm in their business with them, but they're so close to the business every day. And I just can't get them to get in that little mental helicopter and fly up over it and look down at it, because they're so involved in it.
Sure.
The way I get my father or my mother to come in and talk to you might be by calling you first and asking you, how should I do that?
Sure.
Especially
if you are either desiring a seat at the table of perhaps being the next generation of that business, or you just see that business ownership interest is becoming a little too daunting for mom and dad, and they should be considering their exit, or maybe the marketplace is just right for that business or that sector of the marketplace to consider a third-party transaction, or maybe you're friendly with some of the management team and you're seeing that their time horizons are such that if they're going to be the successor owners of this business, we got to get on us, mom and dad. So yeah, lots of reasons why you could easily reach out.
You're the right guy to talk to. So let's say that my dad, Joe Esamendi, Uncle Joe, we've been talking for a long time. I see that he's very involved in what he's trying to accomplish. I'm worried that he may be approaching the end of the line here without realizing it, because he's so tied up in the business. I want him to start talking with you about it, because I feel like you could really help him get that perspective that he needs to do this right. Where does that conversation start? How do you start that conversation with somebody?
Yeah, actually, we started in an interesting way. So we have access to, because of an affiliation I have, one of my designations comes along with a small group. It's about 200 professionals across the country. Most are attorneys, accountants, investment bankers, and there's some wealth management folks. And so we have access to some resources that help and aid in these conversations. And so I probably would say, Al, thanks for calling. Can you share with Joe a link to this survey?
Right.
You have a survey.
Okay, you have
We have a survey. Joe will answer the questions of this survey. There are no right or wrong answers. It's quite easy. It really just tries to get to understand how ready is Joe, mentally and financially, to consider whatever the next stage of his evolution looks like, right?
Okay.
Maybe one day he's not going to own this business.
Right.
So Joe completes that survey. I get some results. He gets them as well.
Okay.
I don't even have to be involved. You can literally send him the link. He will get the results.
So not threatening, no cost.
None.
None whatsoever. So it's a kind of exploration somebody could start off on.
Right.
If they get comfortable or uncomfortable with it at the end, they can put it off for a bit or stop right there.
That's right. I mean,
Okay,
and they can reach out to me.
Point is,
No, they owe me nothing. You owe me nothing, right? You just simply shared with him something you thought might be insightful.
on the other hand, they could learn a lot just by answering those questions.
Yeah. So the survey, the way it's designed, is that the answers are then essentially put on a grid,
Right.
and they are just simply measured against thousands of other entrepreneurs who filled out the exact same survey.
Okay.
So I've done it, right, as my
Right.
own due diligence. So I filled it out with Passehl Financial in mind, and then I got a set of results. Those results both resonate with me, but also let me see where I stand among thousands upon thousands of other entrepreneurs who filled out the same gosh darn
Right.
survey.
Right.
Now, interestingly enough, anywhere between 75 and 85% of the respondents to this survey end up in one of 4 quadrants.
Okay.
Now, these 4 quadrants, as we walk people through planning, then help us to identify what kind of exits they should be considering. Whether that exit's 2 years down the line or 15 years down the line doesn't much matter. And so the interesting thing is Joe gets that result. Joe can reach out to me. 75 to 85% of Joes are in this what is referred to as a stay and grow
Right.
business owner mindset. So my report back to them would be, congratulations, Joe, you've built a great business here, keep going, and just do some smart planning around it, because what best resonates with you and your goals and objectives per this survey is you need to grow this thing,
Okay.
and you probably need to build your own personal balance sheet
Right.
so that down the line, when you consider your exit options, you have all the options under the sun available to you.
Right. Right. You got
As
that whole
opposed
world of
to just one.
possibilities. Right.
Right? Think of it this way, the longer we go without doing the applicable planning,
fewer
the less options we're going to have as
fewer
we get
choices,
closer.
right.
Choices coming up. At the end, you've only got one, and that's it.
And I get it. I mean, most entrepreneurs, they're of the belief and the mindset, and I totally understand because I have the same gosh darn one,
Sure.
which is, well, I'm going to run this thing as long as I want to run this
Right,
thing.
exactly.
Right? Well, okay, maybe I'll be the bearer of bad news here, but the marketplace, your key executives, or your health might have something different to say.
It's going to dictate what's going to happen.
Gosh darn right.
That's it. So here we are talking to Uncle Joe. Right? Uncle Joe took the survey. He falls into the happy 75% quadrant. You're doing great. You want to keep growing it, right? Are you prepared for the question, how do I do that? How do I grow my business? Are you good with that? I mean, is that something you can help with?
Love the question. I mean, it's the old adage, there's no bad questions, right?
Yeah,
I mean, all the answers might not be within me and my firm, right? And so that's actually where having a 20-year presence in this marketplace and having great relationships with various accountants and attorneys and
Right.
bankers and other relationships, professional coaches,
Great.
where we might be able to help Uncle Joe here by circling the wagons.
Uncle Joe.
Oh, I just
That's
love
as
it.
much fun as you, yeah. You look like you're having a good time in that one.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is perfect because that's exactly, I mean, that's exactly the kind of perspective you want from somebody. When you hire an expert, you're not just hiring their expertise,
Right.
you're hiring all the people they know as well.
Oh, there's no question. I mean,
Yeah.
all of our expertise are going to be limited, right? There's a certain limitation to what we can be able to deliver.
Right.
And in many cases, we want professional bias that comes from other complementary or ancillary professional
Right.
views,
Sure.
right? So we just had a meeting, this exact topic with a client and CFO of the company. So we got owner, we've got CFO, we've got spouse of owner, we've got accountant, we've got attorney, and we want everyone's perspective, right? We want everyone to feed into the equation so that we can feel like we're vetting as many of the critically important cues and issues as possible to end with the desired result.
Right, and we should mention too at this point, we'll talk about that a little bit more later, you're affiliated with Northwest Mutual.
I am.
Which makes you part of a very, very large, very powerful family. And all those resources can be brought to bear to help solve Uncle Joe's problems.
We
No
take
question.
a break now, Ralph.
We're going to, well, is that your idea? Was
Yeah,
that
don't
somebody
take
tell
the-
you that?
Well, I think we have to take a
We'll
break.
be back with
Uncle
more-
Joe needs some coffee.
Yeah, he's
Jeff,
coffee.
Jeff
Annoyed with me.
Passehl. More with Geoff Passehl after
Right.
these words, these messages.
There
Come
you
back
go.
for more CEO chat.
There you go. Don't go away.
Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, You can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Shelter dogs aren't broken. They've simply experienced more life. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write. The ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
Add us on social media to watch bloopers, behind-the-scenes footage, previews, and more.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Whether you're a gourmet cook or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest, locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day.
Well, welcome back to CEO Chat. My name is Al Cini.
I'm Joe Osamendi.
You are?
Yes, I am.
You're Uncle Joe.
Oh, Uncle Joe today. Oh, excuse me, Uncle Joe Osamendi.
Now you are.
During the break and before the program, Jeff, we were talking about the, first of all, I want to thank Mark Sinkow, who was a guest on our program a couple of months ago, for introducing you, because it's just great having you on the program. And so thanks, Mark, for that. And I know you speak in front of his groups, and plus a number of other groups. So you meet people like Uncle Joe all the time. What's their number one question? What is it when people are owning a business and they're thinking about that end of the business thing? You're even uncomfortable with the word. It's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people, isn't it?
It is.
What are they worried about? What is it that concerns them the most?
How do I get started, and how much time is this going to take?
And
Right, because again, go back to what we mentioned earlier. Business owners are oftentimes day in and day out
I'm too busy for this.
in the business.
Too busy to do this.
Right.
Talk
Right.
about
So
that.
where do I get
Great.
started?
Great question.
Survey's an easy starter that we talked about earlier.
How long does a survey take?
5 minutes at
Okay.
most.
Oh.
Okay.
Right. A conversation. I call it a discovery process. It's an hour to an hour and a half in my office. Nice controlled environment. Hopefully with any stakeholder who needs to be involved in the conversation, usually business owner or owners, if there's
Could be partners.
spouse, right? Because I don't want to just hear the business owner's, his or her view. I want to get his or her spouse's view on things as well.
Right.
And just have that discovery process is holistically about gaining clarity on all the things that are really important. What's your vision for the future? What values do you all possess? What's your mission at hand here? Right? Because I can't just assume everyone has the same goal.
Right.
Right? Not everyone's goal is to sell their business for the most money.
Right.
In fact, you'll find a lot of successful entrepreneurs, that's not their goal at all.
Really?
What is it?
It could be community impact. It could be family legacy. It can be to take care of the executive team that helped build what they have.
It's not just an ending. It's really the turning of a page.
It's a legacy.
It's a legacy.
It's a transition of a legacy.
Got it.
And so what I often I don't often talk to these prospective clients about, tell me what life's going to be like when you sell the business, Uncle Joe. It's let's talk about your exit and what exit best resonates with you and your goals,
Right.
and what's that process going to look like, and what planning do we need to do to support it, and what resources are available or aligned with the goals and objectives.
You got in this business right out of school, right?
I did.
Yeah. What was the influence to make that you do wealth management? That's very curious.
So this is pre the days of Google.
Okay.
So very long story cut short, I grew up in a working class town, great people, great environment. My parents were very supportive of education. They had always said that money's challenging here in our home because we didn't go to college, and if you can go to college, you go to college.
You want to do that.
So some way, shape, or form, I got myself into the University of Pennsylvania, which was a pretty big culture shock. Ivy League institutions weren't part of my family lineage.
Okay.
Pretty big school.
Yeah, I mean, it was different. And when I graduated, I had intentions actually of going off to law school. And I had a chance encounter with somebody who introduced me to the Northwestern Mutual, which up until that point, literally up until I walked into that office suite, I knew nothing about Northwestern Mutual.
Okay.
Right.
All the way up until I was in training for my first week, I couldn't have spelled 401k if you spotted me the 4.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, I didn't know what IRAs were. I certainly
Right.
didn't know anything about insurance planning or complex estate issues.
Right.
And I just remember my mentor at the time sharing with me that we're going to teach you how to work with a pretty affluent part of the marketplace. I didn't even know what that meant or who those folks were.
Okay.
Okay, I'm willing to learn. And then what I realized really early in the development of my practice, which is now more of a firm because I have a really sharp, talented team that helps to support us in these endeavors,
Right.
Was that I really gravitated to working with entrepreneurs. It's just what I like to
It's
do.
fun.
Right.
I think like they do. They tend to think like me. That might be scary for some people, but it's just we synchronize really well.
Good.
So I started going down the path of getting some credentials and some specializations to really support the work that an entrepreneur needs.
So that 90-minute conversation you were describing is fun for you. You enjoy that. You have a passion for learning what people do. And it's enlightening for them because often nobody's ever asked them the kinds of questions you're going to ask them or explored or picked their brains the way their brains are about to be picked. And they learn things from that.
I hope they learn things from that, and I
I'm
hope
sure
even if
they
it
do.
doesn't progress to that it becoming a client engagement, that they at least feel great about the encounter,
Right.
and that they feel great about the experience, right? Because for me, we're so low pressure in advancing that to actual client engagement that I'd rather them just have a great experience, and who knows, 5 years later they might resurface
Sure.
because timing's just better.
Wow.
And that's part of being a fee for planning advisor allows you to go through that more relaxed approach to things. I'm not disrespectful of folks in sales whatsoever. I love folks who are in sales. I think folks in sales make the economy go around. I just believe that when it comes to this sensitive planning around business transactions or transitions, estate planning, real wealth management, a holistic view toward it that has both mental and financial components,
Right.
you probably shouldn't be getting that advice from a sales folk.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a consultative thing, and you're really
It is.
more of a counselor than, and a little bit of a psychologist too, because you're trying to, when you talk about the mental aspects of that transition that's coming, they're a much larger part of the formula than you would think. The way you feel about who you're going to become when you make this change is definitely factored into all this.
I would venture to guess, although I don't know that there are any statistics we can go find to prove this, but just through conversations I've had with lots of other advisors who will work, again, in a complementary or ancillary way in the same space, I would bet you more deals are killed due to lack of mental preparedness than to financial preparedness.
That is such a great point, really, and that's, I mean, a lot of that can really get in the way if you don't wrap your arms around it and become objective about it. Sometimes the trick to doing that is to talk with somebody who's outside of the problem, away from what you're doing all the time. It can give you kind of a fresh look at what you've been working on your whole life in a lot of ways.
Well, no question. I mean, it's the planning aspect of it. It's the earlier we get out ahead of that thing and we can start to plan for, so what do you do with your time when you no longer show up here 60 hours a week?
Right.
So, and you don't put your name, you're not putting your logo on the back of the Little League t-shirts any longer.
Yeah, right.
You're not part of the fabric of the community. You're not Uncle Joe, the owner of
the
Uncle
local
Joe's food
restaurants,
distributor.
a chain of restaurants.
Exactly.
Which is another question. Does it matter whether it's a service or a product that they sell, or Doesn't make any
we're
difference?
Industry agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
We
All
just
the-
like
all
to
the
work
same
with good
thing.
people who want to take care of their businesses, their families, their.
Okay. These days too, it could be not-for-profits. They're kind of like semi-corporate. I mean, charter schools, for example, are a nonprofit, but they're a business, and they have to run like a business, and they're owned by somebody, and that person also has to be thinking about how they're going to make a transition.
They're at least led by somebody, right?
Yeah.
Or some bodies. Right?
Sure, somebody's got to be thinking about that.
Nonprofits have to be thinking about the transition of the key leadership team as much as a for-profit company does.
Yeah, no, that's
it's
important.
just that there's not a monetization event that would occur in the private sector.
Right.
Right, but that doesn't mean that there isn't smart planning that should be done for those, let's call them C-level suite.
Right.
Right, who's their successor? How long does that successor need
Right.
to be trained up into that role?
Right.
So, because if you're the C-level, if you're the CEO of a very large nonprofit, you think a lot like an entrepreneur does.
Sure.
Yeah, you do, and that's
Same mindset.
You have to. You're running a business.
it. So how many of these have you done?
A lot. I've been at this for 20 years.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I've been at the fee for planning element for just shy of 10.
Okay.
So, a lot.
Quite a
And
few.
we-
You've had a lot of experience with this.
And to your point earlier, one of the parts of the process that I will say as a part of my team, enjoy the most is what you just referenced. It's that first meeting where you get to spend 90 minutes just helping somebody download.
Really.
Ask them questions that they probably haven't been asked, get them to think about things they're probably not thinking about all that often. But deep down inside, they know it's really important stuff. And they walk away from that with a sense of, maybe there's a slight sense of relief because they got a chance to voice some concerns or issues. Then there's a little bit of a sense, or not a lot of a sense of, okay, I got to get cracking on this thing.
Right.
But I hope that process is very cathartic.
Okay. We're getting to a point where we're going to wrap up in a second. You get to tell everybody how to reach you. I want to mention your affiliation with Northwest Mutual gives you access to a portfolio of insurance programs that you can offer. Also gives you access to a whole bunch of experts in various aspects of wealth management, including things like tax planning. And I mentioned when we had our conversation before the program, I got jammed up once because I own commercial real estate, forgotten that I'd depreciated it over many years. When I went to sell it, I expected to pay capital gains, but I didn't expect I'd owe the government as much as I did. Helping people with just seeing around the corners with issues like that, I think, is a big part of the value proposition that you offer. And so,
I hope.
Well, I think it's true. And so for the people who are watching our program, take a look at your camera and tell them all how to reach you.
Well, probably the easiest way is our website, which is just my last name, -financial.com. The main number at my office is 215-981-1314. And unfortunately, you got snagged by our friend called Recapture.
Yes.
Right? And although we might not overtly have provided you the advice to avoid that, we would have made sure that your accountant was
aware of that.
actively having that conversation with you, because we probably would have planned for your exit well before you planned for it.
That is another point, a really important point. You may have an accountant, and we're not talking about replacing your accountant.
Not at all.
But there's a whole level of service and advisory that you do above and beyond all that. It's very important too.
It takes a team.
Jeffrey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being
Uncle
with us on
Joe.
CEO
You're
Chat.
welcome.
Uncle
Thanks,
Joe.
buddy.
He'll always be Uncle Joe, from now and forever. And thanks all of you for joining